So this is a 2008 Yamaha Stratoliner cruiser that they made out of the Star Series. It was called. It was part of the Star Series. Hell of a bike. This was like the flagship model, kind of the more higher, top tier bikes you could buy at the time. When the Harley craze back then was really rolling. I mean, everybody jumped on the bandwagon from Johnny Peg scooters. Well, they weren't scooters. They were 300cc old Suzuki engines. Johnny Peg. Anyways, weird Chinese collaboration, allegedly made in Chicago. But anyways, everybody from those to BMW to I mean, everybody was just made cruisers. It's an Orange County chopper craze. They had like 50 or 100 different motorcycle companies, and so the Japanese jumped in on it, and some models had were more resilient than others in terms of the final design execution. I mean, but this one was really cool. This is a cool bike. This is a 1.9 liter V-twin air-cooled push-rod engine, and a lot of really unique styling cues, from the master cylinder to the unique rims on here. A 5-speed transmission, I believe. Big long gears. It's got a long wheelbase, so I mean, this thing cruises like a Cadillac. And it's got the big V-twin engine, big push-rod tubes, goofy signal lights, nice layout. This is a belt drive, which is nice and quiet. They're kind of I don't really care for them on gravel roads. You get a rock in there and it can tear your belt apart. I'm a big fan of shaft drive or chain. It's really a pleasure to ride on the open road. It's a North American bike. Europeans probably won't appreciate this sort of thing. I mean, it doesn't lend itself well. It's a bit of a barge to drive on tight, twisty backcountry roads. So it's a bit of a barge in those situations. It's heavy. It's about 750 pounds dry, and it's probably more like 1,000 after it's loaded up with the rider and maybe a passenger, and you know, you get the fuel in it and the coolant and whatnot, and you know, it's probably about 1,000 pounds, which is pushing kind of the limit of modern motorcycle tires. Actually, it's hard to find a tire for this thing. Tires don't last long on the back of this thing, so yeah, you got to be choosy on what you're buying in terms of a tire. The front is like a weird size too. It's a 130 70-13, and the rear is a 200. I don't know what it is. It's a 255-17 actually. So that's not too weird of a tire. They use those on big liter bikes and whatnot. But again, if you want something for a cruiser kind of orientation with the material that they use, so you get some longevity out of it, it's going to set you back a few bucks. And because the front one's a 130-18, which is kind of a weird size, I think the V-Rod uses something like that. Interesting note about tires, you know, every time they had weird proprietary flagship models that come out, like the V-Max back in '85 comes to mind, the tires were always a weird size. And when they first came out, I mean, the tires were so expensive. They were, you know, $400, something like that. You know, for a motorcycle tire, because you don't get much more than 10,000 K. I mean, I know some guys do roll on beyond that, but I mean, really, the stiction is gone, and I don't know what it is. The goodness is gone out of the tires, and they don't feel well planted on the road after, you know, they get maybe 3/4 through, 75% through the modern tires, and so there might be tread left, but it's definitely time to change it nonetheless. So this was a cool bike. It had a lot of unique styling cues, and this motor was a hell of a motor. It's a hydraulically actuated clutch. There's no clutch cable. It's got twin disc brakes up front with discs on the rear and double discs on the front. Very cool rims. It uses a
pretty common caliper. You find these on R1s, R6s, FGRs.
These are pretty cool bikes. The whole Star series was pretty good. They kind of started with the Virago and then worked the way up. They started with the Virago 920 and 750 back in 1980, 81. And then by 84 they had some good styling cues, and then they ran that Virago and the VMAX series up till, oh, I don't know, probably 96, I think, 2000, I'm not sure. The last VMAX was 06, I believe. And then they came out with the Star series, which was sort of a revamped version of the V-Twins, and this is kind of a product of that, just as the MT series and Yamaha. It's like a flavor of design styling that Yamaha does. So was the Roadstar, V-Star. I guess they just called it Star, the Star series. But anyways, that's a bit of info on these bikes. They were really cool bikes. I don't really do much with them. You know, they tend to be fairly reliable. I do tires and brake pads and the usual consumable stuff on them, but you know, this engine, if you take care of it and you just change the oil, like, I don't know, every 3, 4, 5,000 K with a good quality oil and a filter, man, these things will run if you just run them within the parameters they were designed for. I see some guys, they try to turn them into drag bikes and they're, you know, revving them and stuff, but if you just gingerly ride them around, boy, they really have it down pat with the oil pumps and the oiling system, and the machining is really good in them. So good bike. You find a well cared for one and it'll probably outlive you if you take care of it. It's a pretty high quality bike. They were about $20,000 when they were new back in 08. Just a touch over, which is probably like 1.2 million in today's currency with inflation. But on the used market, they're an excellent value. You can get them between $3,000 and, I don't know, probably $3,000 and $9,000 around there. They generally have low kilometers. Not many guys actually ride them. So you get, you know, this one, for example, has 25,000 kilometers on it. And that's typical, you know, that's typical what I see. Victory motorcycles are the same way. Some guys mile them out, but, you know, most guys just drive down to the donut shop and back again on a nice summer's day. So, but that's pretty typical. So you can find a good deal on these. But with that said, I mean, it is a big, long, lanky bike. It's heavy. The insurance is probably a little up on it. It's one of the, like I said, the more top tier bikes, flagship model Yamaha put out. Yeah, they put this motor in an MT-01. It's called. It was like a naked bike with sport bike handling and chassis. That was just a really cool bike. It was like the Suzuki B-King. It was sort of a styling exercise that appealed. It's like a niche market, boutique bike, I guess would be a good way to term it. You know, but nonetheless, I don't know what it gets mile per gallon. If you drive it gingerly, change the oil, and change the filter, it's a great engine. It'll probably outlive you. They did have some problems with the transmissions, which is pretty synonymous with Yamaha harking back to the 1980s. I don't know why they keep doing this. Second gear is always an issue, which is common on a lot of bikes because the first gear you're already in, and then when you jam it, you shift her up into second, and bang it. So sometimes you miss a shift, and it rounds the dogs. It bends the shift. It bends the shift forks. It bends the forks, the rods that the forks run on, and just cause all kinds of carnage. So be nice on the shifting. These are kind of long, lanky, clunky transmissions. Much better than, say, an old BMW or an old Harley for sure. But yeah, they're not a real slick, you know, shifting race transmission, so to speak. But Yamaha always had problems with that. Right up till like 2000, and well, even the new FGR 1300s, they had a, you know, so they crammed a 6-speed transmission into a 5-speed space, and so the way they done that is they reduced the size of the gears, and of course that didn't work out too well, and now they're replacing whole gear sets because the gears are falling apart, and which could bind up, by the way, bind up in the transmission and lock up the rear wheel. So it's pretty serious that, you know, when these transmission failures happen. And the dealers were having to, I don't know if they've rectified it totally, but you know, pulled all the plastic off and yard the motor and split the cases and put, you know, it was just a pile of work. It's the same with these things. Like, they're vertically split cases. I believe they're vertically split. Yeah, they're vertically split. And you gotta take all the top end off and split the cases, a crank and all the gears. You know, then you need gaskets and the oil and the coolant and you know, it's just like it's a lot of work. Some bikes actually have cassette style transmissions, like Harley Davidson, and they're much more sensible in many ways. But yeah, so this was Yamaha's styling exercise, and they've done a good job of it. Just be aware if you're buying one of these, you know, if you buy one that's crashed or put down, that the parts are, like, first of all, probably unavailable, and then second of all, they're quite expensive. Like the signal lights I priced them at one point maybe 10 years ago, and they were 60 or 70 bucks back then. So even if you can get them, I don't know, they're probably. And when you look at the signal lights, I mean, they're quite unique. I don't think they use these on anything else other than this bike. It has this weird, long, conical lens that's just, you know, lends itself to shearing off. I mean, it pokes out and it's really thin, shitty plastic. So they did, so they do some goofy things like that. And then this big old muffler, I mean, it's nice and quiet, and this is fuel injected, by the way. So that's really nice, you know. You just turn the key and it buzzes up and it starts idling nice. So anyways, if you're in the market for one of these, go for it. I mean, it's a hell of a bike. It's long and lanky, great big massive wheelbase. It's so on the highway, you know, with those long gears, this is a really nice bike to ride. It just glides down the highway. You know, on North American roads, like if you went from here to, say, Mexico, you know, 3,000-4,000 kilometers, it's a nice bike to ride through, like, the Utah desert, and it's just yeah, it's pretty cool for that. I don't know about the back English country roads. It's you know, I don't think it would be that pleasant to ride, but, you know, each to their own. Anyways, thought I'd do a quick video on how to have it in. I'm doing an oil change on it, so I'll do a few points on that.
Oil fill is underneath the seat. It's right there. It takes about 5.5 liters, something like that. Just fill it, check it. This is a dry sump engine. So what that means is all the oil is in the back here in a separate tank, and it feeds the engine, and then it circulates and then drops back into the tank, sort of thing. So a lot of old Harleys had this, CB750s back in the day, back in the 70s. Yeah, there's a bunch of bikes that use that. Some dirt bikes use it in the frame for oil, like the XL600, for example. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but it's a dry sump system. So you have to drain the tank, and then you have to drain the motor. And so when you fill this thing up, though, you know, you fill up the oil tank and fill up your oil filter before you spin it on, and then you run it, and then you have to check it again. Now, be aware there's a check valve in this, so a lot of people overfill it, and what happens is there's too much oil in there. Like if you put 6 liters or 7 liters or whatever you put in there, it'll start pumping out somewhere, and Harleys do this, and all dry sump systems do this. So just try a little bit at a time. Put the initial 5 liters in, run it, then check it, check the level. There's a dipstick in here somewhere, I think. Yes, there is a dipstick. So check it there. Anyways, so the plugs are down underneath here, and if you're having problems finding them, grab a mirror. That's a good idea. Grab a mirror. There's the plug for the oil tank. It's on the right hand side of the bike, and then you have one drain plug on the bottom of the engine cases. That's right by where the kickstand is, and then you have yet another drain plug. There's 3 of them right there towards the front of the motor, just kind of in behind the oil filter, which is a spin-on filter, which in the Fram world is a PH6017A, I believe, or the Yamaha version. I can't remember the number, but really common. A lot of different models use this. So yeah, fill up your oil filter, your new one, spin it on, and then you know, before you fill up the tank and run it initially. So